Welcome to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. I'm glad you're with us today. Our guest is Gary DeLong. Mr. DeLong is a member of the Long Beach City Council. He is also a candidate for the United States Congress. I want to thank you so much for joining us. And you've been campaigning heavily for the last several months, and I understand that recently you basically had a telephonic town hall. And you had several thousand people tune in. And I want to get a sense from you, especially given the district that you're running in, which is fairly middle of the road. What are voters saying to you on the telephonic campaign trail?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me back. I appreciate it. We called up to 50,000 people several days ago. And first of all, what shocked us about it is we are hoping to get maybe 3,000, 3,200, kind of about a 6%. Over 7,000 people joined that phone call.
Nice.
So the first thing that we learned from it is people are engaged in the political process and they want to have a voice.
Good.
Who's going to be their elected official. It is good.
What were they asking you, though? I really want to hear, because you're on the ground. I'm just in a studio.
Okay, well, you know what? You're probably going to find out there's the same things that you and I care about. Number one was the economy, clearly.
Okay.
What can I do to help move the economy forward? What legislation could I offer, could I support, could I endorse that would create jobs for Americans?
Well, let's talk about that, because you are running as a Republican. You are also running very proudly as a moderate Republican.
I am.
And there aren't a lot of Republicans running that proudly as a moderate Republican. I mean, we think about recently Richard Lugar, a moderate Republican, was defeated in his primary. And so what I'm wondering is, you know, the times of moderates in Congress really governing in the center, those days seem to be gone. So how are you going to create jobs, you know, through legislation as a moderate Republican? There's no moderate Democrats left.
Let me tell you one thing I learned. I think I knew this anyway, but let me tell you one thing I learned. Is we did 3 surveys throughout the teleforum. We asked about how important was balancing the budget, we talked about health care, and we talked about how important it was to have somebody that was bipartisan that could work with both parties. Over 73% of the people said they expect you to be able to work with the other guy. It's a huge issue for the American public. They are tired of, I'm standing on principle, I'm not going to budge, I'm not going to compromise. They want you to compromise.
But here's the issue. I believe you. I believe that's what the survey said. But this is California. This is not the rest of the country. And Californians, I think, if you took that same survey in the panhandle of Florida or the suburbs of Atlanta, I don't think you'd get that result. And so your fellow members, be it Democrats or Republicans, they're not being told to compromise. They're being told to stand their ground.
You know, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you.
And you're allowed to do that.
I appreciate that. You know, as I talk to people across the country, I think they think there's gridlock in Washington. They
do think that.
They think, you know, our economy is staggering because Congress can't get their act together and move it forward. They want you to work together and make things happen. They're going to measure you by your results.
But then why are they voting out moderates like Dick Lugar, like chasing out Olympia Snowe in Maine, a moderate Republican? I mean, and this is not a Republican phenomenon. It is a Republican. The Blue Dog Democrats, they're vanishing. The equivalent of Blue Dog Republicans, they're either losing or not returning.
Certainly there is examples of where that's happened, but I tell you, I've been spending some time in Washington recently, not surprisingly.
Yes.
There's a group called the Tuesday Group. They meet on Wednesdays. I'm not sure why, but it's a Tuesday group. But it's Republicans, it's Democrats. It's, you know, it's a social.
But is it a caucus of 10?
But no, it was more than 10 people there. But it's 40 or 50. But you know, but they're working together, saying, well, if you can get along in the evening, then maybe the next day you can get along and do some advanced legislation.
Here's an example of my concern. Let's talk about the stimulus, which was passed by a Democratic Congress with, I believe, 0 Republican votes. Is that right? Maybe there was one, I can't remember, but I think it was 0.
There were a handful.
There were a handful. And
those Republicans got beat up for it. They voted for it, by the way. There was a price to pay.
Case in point. And if you look at kind of nonpartisan analysis, the CBO, which is nonpartisan, Fitch came out with a report recently they both said that the stimulus actually worked. It said that the policy of the stimulus significantly softened the severity of the decline in the GDP, that without the stimulus, the U.S. might be mired in a recession. I mean, there were days where Republicans would see that, Democrats would see that, but there was just no interest in giving President Obama the votes.
Well, first of all, let me say I question that outcome because it's really difficult to say, well, what would have happened if this didn't happen?
Well,
I don't know that we know.
I mean, Fitch said.
But we spent, how much money did we spend? $900 trillion?
$700 billion.
$700 billion, $800 billion on that? I mean, I think it's questionable what the results were. I would have much rather seen economic growth in the private sector that created long-term jobs, as opposed to Congress spending $800 billion or $700 billion that we didn't have and then adding it to the national debt for our kids to repay.
Let's talk about health care, for example.
If I can give you another example, though, a good one, though, is let's take the House budget. Right, so the president sent his budget over, got 0 votes, not from Democrats, not from Republicans. House Republicans, they put a budget, the Congressman Paul Ryan's budget, they got it approved.
Oh,
but here's the problem. No, wait, no, I'm going to get to your point.
You're right.
The point is, though, it was on a partisan vote. I think that's a problem. Even though it passed, the Republicans need to work with the Democrats.
Yes.
They need to compromise. They need to find some middle ground, and they're going to have to give a little. You can't say, look, I have enough votes to pass the budget, so I'm going to pass the one I want. No, you need to make sure it's a bipartisan budget, or you're not going to get the Senate.
I recently read an article by someone from the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank, and Brookings Institute, a liberal think tank. And they said very clearly in their analysis that the gridlock is really as a result of Republican incalcitrance. I don't know that I specifically agree with that, but there is a view right now that the Republicans want the issue as opposed to solutions.
Well, what I can tell you is that I think the Republicans feel that it's the Democrats that are being
they
recalcitrant, and the Democrats think it's the Republicans are being recalcitrant. I think both parties need to do a better job working together, and I think we can. I'll tell you, I'm an optimist, but if I did not believe it was true, I wouldn't go back to Washington because it's a waste of my time.
How do you ensure that when and if you're elected, that you won't be chastised, ostracized, excluded because you are a moderate Republican by leadership who is giving you committee assignments?
Because I've already had these conversations with the House leadership. That if I'm successful in this race, here's who I am. While I am fiscally conservative, so I think you can pretty much count on me, anything that's pro-jobs, pro-economic growth, I'm your guy, I'm with you. But candidly, on the social issues, I'm not in line with many of the hardcore Republicans, and they need to respect that because, candidly, their alternative to me is a liberal Democrat.
But are they respectful enough to recognize that you are running in a district that in a lot of ways mirrors what you're describing? So if you are pushed to the right,
I won't be coming back.
Right.
I mean, it's that simple. You pull me to the right, then you'll have a liberal Democrat replace me, not a moderate Democrat.
Are there other districts like that around the nation that you can think of?
You know, I'm sure there are, but I am so myopically focused on my race. I can tell you everything about every voter demographic, but you get 5 miles on either side.
Of course.
That's what I'm
tell us
focused
about your
on.
district.
Well, it's a great district. It's a new California 47th Congressional District. 58% of the district's in Los Angeles County, 53% is Long Beach. The remaining 5% is Avalon.
Is it every sliver of Long Beach City?
It is 85% of Long Beach. The top of Long Beach is not included. It's got Avalon, Catalina, Signal Hill, a portion of Lakewood, and then the 42% that's in Orange County are the communities of Rossmore, Los Al, Cypress, portions of Westminster, Stanton, Garden Grove, and Buena Park. It's a great district.
Intuitively, I would think that the LA County part is Democratic and the Republican part is in Orange County. Is that necessarily true?
It's not that simple, but yes, there's a higher percentage of Democrats in LA County than there are in Orange County.
I think it's fair to say you're probably very well known in the LA County portion of this district.
I am.
How are you introducing yourself to our friends in Orange County?
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm doing. Is I'm introducing myself. In fact, over 90% of the elected officials in Orange County have endorsed me. Congressman Royce endorsed me. Congressman Rohrabacher's endorsed me. State Senator Tom Harmon. Assembly Member Jim Silver. Yes. Several mayors have endorsed me. They're Democrats. Democrat Mayor Larry Forster from Signal Hill. Democrat Mayor Carol Warren from Stanton.
Most importantly, and in our final moments, what is it like to run for Congress? Give us a little insight.
Oh, I'll tell you, it's everything I expected and more.
And less?
And more at this point.
Right.
I mean, I've got a tiger by the tail. I mean, which is a good thing. The campaign is growing, more volunteers, more people want to support. It's an amazing process, but I'll tell you, I'm getting weary.
I can only imagine. I want to thank you so much for joining us. His name is Gary DeLong. He is a member of the City Council in Long Beach, also a candidate for the United States Congress. When we come back, we'll be speaking with the chair of the State Board of Equalization. His name is Jerome Horton. I'm Brad Palmer, and we'll be right back on Charter California Edition.
Pursuant to the 2010 census, which state gained the most seats in the United States House of Representatives? Arizona, California, Florida, or Texas? Texas gained 4 congressional seats, Florida gained 2, California did not gain or lose seats, and New York and Ohio lost 2 seats.
Charter California edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. I'm glad you're still with us. Our guest is Jerome Horton. Mr. Horton is a member of the Board of Equalization in California. He's actually chair of that board, which includes 5 members total, 4 elected, and the controller. And I want to speak with you briefly about the controller before we talk about some tax assistance that's being offered by the board.
Sure.
The controller recently came out with a report, and it talked about receipts. And tax receipts are coming in lower than the governor's budget predictions. Could you explain that to us? Does that mean we're getting less tax revenue than we did last year? It's a little confusing.
Well, I think the confusing part is, Brad, that there's a projection that the government will
Right.
make every year, which has nothing really to do with reality. It's just their best guess. And so what the controller is saying is that the guess that was made last year sometime was off. And that the revenues are not the same as they had originally projected.
So
it's not an indication of anything drastically going wrong,
I
but it's
understand.
certainly an indication of not having the revenues necessary to cover the costs, the expenses that government has.
And so what that means is that the governor, the legislature, sets a budget based upon these predictions, and when the dollars don't come in, the deficit is therefore larger. So when we hear that there's a $8-9 billion budget deficit, with the $2 billion shortfall, it's now $10-11 billion.
Yes, and possibly higher than $11 billion. I mean, this is an issue where government focuses on raising taxes or cutting services. And sometimes they don't cut enough, and they don't necessarily have enough revenue. There's another area, though, Brad, that I think it's important that we begin to look at, and that's called government efficiency. And how can government be more efficient? And I think that's the message that we have to deliver to the public.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because we hear a lot about government efficiency, and we're all for the whole concept of being more efficient, really using dollars wisely, avoiding waste, fraud, and abuse. But when can we get to a point where we engage in programs to eliminate what I just described, and we see the savings? I mean, we keep talking about it, but it takes time to implement programs that create savings.
Well, I'll tell you, over the last 2 years at the Board of Equalization, we've implemented a number of government efficiency programs, and we're generating additional, I think it's somewhere around $150 million.
That's real money.
As a result of these government efficiency programs. We're accelerating the resolution of problems. So if we solve the problems earlier, the revenue comes in earlier. It reduces the interest and penalties that taxpayers have to pay, and then working with the taxpayers and educating them and helping them to comply with the existing law. And then another thing that we try to do on the efficiency basis is to accelerate the opening of a business. We want to get individuals who are inspiring.
And we're going to talk
to be
about
in
that
business
on a
soon.
future edition of California Edition.
Look forward to it.
Now I want to speak with you about how you have been helping taxpayers, and especially taxpayers who may not have the resources, the knowledge to go to a tax preparer that can get them the maximum refund to which they are entitled.
Yes.
This is not about cutting
Yes.
corners. This is not about cheating out the government. This is about providing legal assistance for taxing. Let's talk about the free volunteer income tax assistance program known as VITA, which is administered through the Board of Equalization.
Okay. Board of Equalization is one of the entities that administers it.
There are others?
And we're focusing on earned income tax credit. And I think, Brad, the optimum word there is earn. Every taxpayer has earned these credits. They're entitled to it if they meet specific criteria.
And let's explain that, because what's known as the EITC is a little complicated, but I know you have the ability to kind of break it down for us. What is the earned income tax credit?
For any family that has earned $50,000 in salary, the federal government gives them a tax credit up to $5,600 plus a few dollars here and there. And so those tax credits can be used to offset your liability and increase your refund.
And think about that. To live on $50,000 is not uncommon.
No.
In the state of California. No. It also doesn't necessarily make you poor. I mean, there are plenty of families that are doing quite well on $50,000 or less.
Yeah.
But the problem is they don't know they can claim the earned income tax credit. And if they don't claim it, they don't get it.
And that's the tragedy, Brad. Over 800,000 individuals in the state of California fail to recapture these funds. And that's about $1.3 billion that could be used to stimulate our economy. So as we talk about revenues being down, it's another government efficiency measure that we can recapture these federal dollars and put them in the hands of people who need them.
And this is a federal credit, not a state credit,
Yes.
so it doesn't necessarily impact the state's bottom line.
It doesn't.
In fact, it does the reverse because it puts more money into the economy.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the successes of the program. I know, for example, that in your district, which is essentially, is it every
LA
sliver
County.
of LA County?
Mostly, yes.
Anything else or just LA County proper?
Mostly LA County.
Okay.
I sooner or later will be into Ventura County.
Well, there you
which
have
will
it
be
with new
interesting.
lines.
Yeah.
But over the last 4 months in tax year 2012, you got over 700 clients as part of the VITA program. And as a result, those clients were able to receive over $1 million that they would not have received in refunds.
Exciting about that, Brad. The real exciting thing for me, though, is that many of our employees volunteered on their own time, came out on the weekend, and they helped individuals complete their tax returns. Individuals are paying billions of dollars to have their tax returns done by private entities, and many of the folks that don't make the money, they can't afford to pay all these extra costs. And then, of course, there isn't a focus on getting the refunds back. We focus on recapturing these federal dollars and putting them back in the hands of the pockets of senior citizens and people who need the money the most. I mean, if you can imagine earning $50,000 and then at the end of the year getting a $5,000 bonus just by completing your tax returns. We think everyone should do it. Unfortunately, they don't.
We've passed the April 15th deadline, but I am sure there are many people out there who have not filed, have properly sought an extension, have not properly sought an extension.
Yes.
Is there still hope, or are there still programs out there in terms of VITA seminars?
The seminars don't exist, but there are still individuals out there, programs that will help you file your income tax returns. Many of your listeners can actually call my office, and we will arrange a situation
and what
to
is
try
the
to
phone
assist
number?
them.
Do you know it offhand?
323-980-1221.
323-980-1221. Here's what's interesting about calling the Franchise Tax Board, the Board of Equalization.
Yes.
It can evoke fear.
Yes.
It's the tax man.
Right.
I want you to talk to our viewers about how today's tax man or woman, Betty Yee's on the board.
Yes, Betty.
Maybe Michelle Steele's on the board.
Yeah.
Really are not about trying to trick, cajole, but to try to help and just create a fair, equitable system whereby you get what you are entitled.
The Board of Equalization is quite different, Brad, as you know. It's the only elected body in the United States. And we're elected by the people of the state of California. So our interest is protecting California taxpayers, assisting them and encouraging them and providing them the tools and the information and the knowledge and assistance in order to comply with the law, to minimize their penalty, minimize the interest, and the frustration that goes along with taxation.
What's also frustrating about being a California taxpayer is the tax system is incredibly complicated.
It is.
And the revenue stream is incredibly it's just uneven because of the way we tax. You and I have spoken about tax reform. As we look forward, do you see any hope for bona fide tax reform in the state of California?
Yeah, I think it will come about, Brad, but I don't think it'll come until we begin to look at taxes as an investment. And when we begin to look at taxes as an investment in our society, and those who get the greatest benefit from the freedoms that we have and from the sacrifices that people are having to make, I believe it's there, Brad. I mean, if you look at many of the millionaires and billionaires have come out and said, we can pay more and we're willing to pay more.
Warren Buffett?
Warren Buffett, exactly. I mean, they're acknowledging that the soldiers, when they go to war and they put their lives on line, that there's a cost associated with being able to accomplish that. When we begin to build roads and schools and educate, there's a cost, but there's also a benefit.
Jerome Horton, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Charter California Edition and for giving us insight as to how we can recapture the most out of the tax credits and tax incentives that may be out there.
Exciting stuff. Thank you, Brad.
When we come back, we're going to be speaking with a professor from Cal State Long Beach. He is listed as one of the best professors by the Princeton Review. His name is Tom Guffrey. My name is Brad Palmer. So we'll be right back on Charter California Edition.
How much money does California's Board of Equalization collect in taxes and fees annually? $25 billion, $50 billion, $65 billion, $80 billion. Every year, California's Board of Equalization collects more than $50 billion in taxes and fees supporting state and local government services.
Welcome back to Charter California Edition. It's my pleasure to introduce you to one of the 300 best professors in the nation. That is according to the Princeton Review. He is one of Cal State Long Beach's finest. His name is Professor Tom Guthrie. He teaches chemistry. He has brought Chris Adams with us, who is a grad student in biochemistry at Cal State Long Beach. And this is how Professor Guthrie starts his chemistry class every semester.
I got a bomb in my hand and I ain't afraid to blow it. I'm crazy and I know it. I'm crazy and I know it.
And that is, of course, from LFAMO.
LFMAO, but in my case it's SMAO. Almost blew my skinny ass off.
Clearly, you can see why Professor Tom Guthrie is so revered by his students at Cal State Long Beach. He teaches Chemistry 100?
Chemistry 100, chemistry for people who have to take it and hate it, but don't know how much they love it. My job is to unbury that deeply buried love for chemistry deep inside of them.
And you're doing it in a very significant way. You, Mr. Adams, get to work with Professor Guthrie on a day in and day out basis. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I mean, he makes the class a performance. I mean, it's not as much being a professor as it is as an artist in this case.
Could you imagine walking into Chemistry 100 on the first day and having this man with the bald head and, you know, just stand up and start singing and then throwing these fire pops right at you? I am so glad that you're here, and I am so glad that you are bringing science to life, because that's what we have to remember. Science is life.
And chemistry is such a good thing, too, Brad. Chemistry in our world has made it so much better rather than worse. Yes, there are nuclear accidents and there are toxic chemicals, but 99.9% of chemistry is wonderful.
Well, think about this. We have 2 nuclear plants in California, Diablo Canyon and San Onofre. They provide 20% of the state's energy.
Absolutely. And look at the good chemistry.
And it's green.
Exactly. It's very green. No CO2, no global warming. And think of all the good things, the vaccines, the foods, the polymers, the shirts that we wear, polyester, on and on.
In fact, Chris Adams is about to get his master's in biochemistry. And what are you going to do?
I'm going to work in the pharmaceutical industry.
There you have it. Hopefully finding a cure for cancer or
Hopefully.
HIV or whatever it may be. So both of you have brought some more experiments, and I'm glad that you can provide them to us. The first, well, you already provided the first one. The second one, a little tamer than what we're going to see later on today. We can see the freedom flag. Professor, go to it.
Yes, sir. This is a demonstration. I try to put many demonstration experiments into the class, laced with humor, as you might guess.
Clearly.
Speaking of pharmaceuticals, did you hear the sad story of the guy who who almost choked on Viagra?
Oh, what happened?
Well, he's okay, but he's got a very stiff neck.
Oh, and that's what you get from Professor Tom Guthrie if you take his chemistry class. What about this experiment?
Let me show you an experiment here with an amazing little piece of paper. It looks like a regular piece of paper.
It does.
But it's magic. Magicians used to use it. Maybe they still do. It's called flash paper. It's a safe explosive. It is nitrocellulose. And I will use this in a little poem that I've made up. The important things in this life, and I try to tell the students this and try to model this. Number one, be a good, decent individual. On this life, which is so short, treat people decently. Be kind. You may not disagree with them, but treat them decently. That's number one. Number two, respect the great country we live in and the freedoms it provides. That's number two. Number three, my main job, 99% of the time, teach chemistry. So I try to intertwine
Should we use these tongs?
We can, I guess we should, Brad, to be safer. Now this little thing is an amazing piece of paper, as you will see. When it burns, it's smokeless, ashless, and it almost is like it goes into another universe. It really doesn't. The combustible materials have oxygen in them, so it forms odorless, colorless gases, but it's an amazing experiment. But we'll intertwine it with a message to be a good person. It's called Let Your Light Shine. The meaning of life, if the truth be told, is respect all people, young and old. Be as kind as you can. That is God's plan. Be a bright light, like this fire of gold. So that is the amazing flashback.
Honestly, if I was taking chemistry and I had you in front of the class, I would come every day.
Well, that's the idea.
Your attendance must be outstanding.
It is.
Yeah, tell us.
It really is. The seats are always packed. Students are, just filling everything up. I mean, people love it. It's, you know, participation is really up there. And it really is something, you know, every single day you get something like chemistry, which, you know, you either love it or hate it.
Right, of course.
And if you don't love it, you're going to be repulsed by it.
Tom, how'd you find out that you were named one of the best 300 professors in the country?
I was up in my old office, Brad, and a student from the Cal State Long Beach 49ers said, there must be a mistake. You were named one of the top professors. I said, my God, the system's worse than I thought.
Exactly.
And that was back, I think, November of last year, I think.
I mean, it really does say a lot. The only professor at Cal State Long Beach, not many in California. And I'm really proud to know you, and I can see why you received this honor. We have a few more minutes, so guess what? You're going to do another experiment for us.
And I might just add, there are many people more deserving than me, Brad, who don't get the input. I have huge classes. My great best friend and college roommate, Dr. Larry Bird, retired from Glendale College, best organic chem teacher in the country.
Oh,
he
you're not
deserves
so
the
bad.
award more than I, but I'm honored
You're
and humbled to take it.
Okay, so what are you going to do for us now?
Well, freedom being the big thing, as you know,
Right.
I would like to do a freedom fireball, and I will wear my goggles.
Which is smart.
Which exemplifies the safety necessary.
And I'm going to take the freedom sign. Chris, are you going to stand and help out, or you're okay? You can stay.
Yeah.
You'll stay. Okay. So
You can call the paramedics
yeah,
if need be, Chris.
exactly.
And this
We got
also,
the extinguishers handy.
Yeah.
this also shows what we can do with household items.
Okay.
The theme of this course is chemistry for today's world, and it's always fun if we can use household items for our fun.
And these are propane? Is that what you've just
Yes, these
torched?
are available from your friendly Ace Hardware store.
Okay.
They are 3 propane torches, propane C3H8, a very clean burning hydrocarbon.
Yes.
And we have here the improbable fuel. You would not think this is a fuel. This is Coffee Mate.
Come
I
on.
don't work for the Nestle company. This is non-dairy creamer. It is laden, though, with fat and is very combustible.
So it's the fat that's combustible?
It is the hydrocarbon side chains of the fat that are very combustible.
So they haven't put some type of...
Oh, no, these are
It's
just
not
natural
like,
fats.
like the saccharides that we see.
No,
that
no,
are
this is
oil-based.
perfectly. Our fats are all have a huge hydrocarbon chains in them. Triglycerides are fats.
And that's what's combustible.
And it's the hydrocarbon part. With the hydrocarbon part, it's much like gasoline, which is very combustible. Now, this is only combustible in powdered form, where the particles of Coffee Mate can intermingle with the O2 from the air. So I will attempt to make a fireball, and it's good to do this at the end of the interview. You might put that over to the side, if you could, right in front of you, to where we can show freedom. Up on the table, if you could, because this is the fire of freedom, and loving this country is so important, so we'll intertwine an explosion with freedom. The Freedom Fireball from the Patriotic Pyro. I thank the folks in our military. They bravely fight to keep you and me free. I salute them all with a freedom fireball in celebration of sweet liberty.
Wow.
In celebration of sweet liberty. Liberty. Freedom.
That is stunning on so many levels. It's stunning because you are so energetic. But it's...
I got to lay off the meth, Brad.
I was
I'm
gonna
just kidding.
No, but
just
I have
kidding.
to tell you, if you didn't tell me that what burned was fat, I would think it was some type of oil-based product like we see in the saccharides. And so this isn't dangerous per se, meaning the fat in here, other than fat not being good for you generally,
Right.
It's not, you know, that they've somehow taken some old fossil fuel and put it in our
No,
coffee mate.
This is artery clogging if you eat enough of it and you don't get
That's another
exercise.
question.
But I mean, that's true of hamburgers, for God's sakes, or potato chips. But yeah, this is just normal.
I have one thing to say to you. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, sir.
I am so impressed by you and by what you provide to our
Well,
students.
thank
Stay, we're almost done. We'll turn those off in a
I
second.
hope that the place won't go
So- no, don't worry. So this is Tom Guffrey. This is his.
And I must congratulate Chris. He's been an indispensable
Right.
aid in being a proctor for years.
Congratulations.
Chris has helped me win this award. And again, many are more deserving than I,
course.
but it's an honor to get it.
I appreciate it. Congratulations. I'm Brad Palmer. Thanks for watching Charter California Edition.